Hello everybody, welcome to my adoption channel. My name is Nairi. I've got two adopted sons and we've had them for some time, and I want to talk today about anxiety, what it's like to live with anxiety in an adoptive family, what it can look like, and give you some of our stories. But also, first of all, I have another book to show you which might be useful if you think you might be in that situation where you do have adopted children that have high levels of anxiety, but maybe they're a little bit older, above preschool age. So help, I've got an alarm bell going off in my head, pretty much just explaining how anxiety works in practice. So this is the page that I think is really good. So when you have anxiety, it teaches you to kind of self-preservation, to either run for it, fight for your life, or pretend to be dead. And in a way, I can see those different stages reflected in my boys when they deal with things. And again, I think my two boys react very differently to anxiety. One gets very angry and the other one is probably frozen to the spot. That's how I describe it. Some common triggers. It's another picture. Hopefully you can see that there. So common triggers are being embarrassed, laughed at, getting it wrong, deserted, shouted at, not listened to. So that's an interesting one. I think when they're at school they may get a lot of those things happening, and then of course they have to control how they feel at school because they can't just let rip, and then they come home and obviously they let rip, and that often happens with us. It's not your fault. That's really lovely. So this is another Jessica Kingsley book, and it's written by K.L. Aspin. Talking to you about our family situation is what I really want to do today, to explain to you how these types of things work out in practice, and maybe to give you some hints and tips about how you might therefore deal with it. I'll give you an example of what's happened recently. Our eldest son has had a birthday coming up and he was going to be going bowling with his friends, and I invited the younger son to come along and to bring a friend with him because I knew that if I didn't do that there would be more problems, so somebody for him to have there with him. But all week, maybe longer than a week, I've noticed a high level of anxiety, not in the older son, who seemed quite excited about it, but in the younger son. Now this could be for a number of reasons, and this is my theory on it. So the first thing about him not having the birthday and his older brother having the birthday is that the attention will be on the older brother, and this can make him feel insecure and not as loved, even though he knows in his heart that it's not the case. The other thing is the older son will be given the gifts, and again that could make him feel insecure. And the other thing is he did ask quite a lot about the actual trip, the bowling, what we were doing afterward. And I find with both of the boys, if they're not familiar with the surroundings, they will ask lots of questions. So my older son will ask quite a lot about the food arrangements, when we're going to eat, where we're going to eat, what we're going to eat. And the younger one will ask more about the environment. So there was lots of questions around that too. And leading up to the birthday was a bit like a bottle about to explode, about to pop. And to start with, I wasn't too sure what it was. I thought it was to do with friendships at school, but as time went on I realised it was the birthday celebration that was causing the younger son so many issues. It would be hard to guess that, because it was a fun afternoon, and in the end they both really enjoyed it. But I think it's really hard sometimes to pinpoint what is causing the anxiety. But for our children in adoptive families, and for foster children as well, anxiety can come from so many different sources and can have so many different triggers. It is so important to recognise it when you see it, because if you don't, you could deal with it in the wrong way. And it was really for me to try and sort out and work out what it was. And then of course when I realised that building up to this we were having issues and worries around it, I could talk to him openly about it. And I said to him, I'm noticing, and this is something else that happens with one son, he gets tics and movements to the face and the head and arms and jerks. I said, I've noticed this is happening a lot more. You seem really anxious. And then I can second guess, is it actually to do with the birthday coming? And then he can say to me, yes it is. And he just said, yes it is. And then I said to him, why? He said, I don't really know why, I'm just anxious about it. And as I say, it could have been for all the reasons that I've just explained to you. Now let me give you another example, and this is where I would say things get even more tricky, because it's the expectations of other people as well. Well-meaning people, people that love the boys, expectations about what they're ready to do and at their age should be ready to do. So recently back along, we had a lovely opportunity for the boys to go away for a weekend with our church, a small group of people, and it would have been catered for them entirely. Like, there would have been nothing about it that they wouldn't have enjoyed. And so on the surface, as a mum and a dad, we are like, you're nearly 12 and 13, go away, have a lovely time with your friends, come back, we'll pick up the pieces, especially the tiredness afterward. Now, we'd booked them in to go and we felt the time was right. The previous year, I think it was offered to them and we didn't go for it because we just didn't think they were ready. So we're leading up to it. High levels of anxiety for both children. The older son will have problems at night and wet the bed, and the younger son will have what I've just explained, sort of tics and jerks and stuff like that. As we were leading up to it, I was worried because I feel quite keenly that they shouldn't be pushed ahead of where they're at. And I think my husband understands that, but obviously he wants them to have the experiences, and I get that too, because I'm, believe it or not, probably shyer than my husband. So I understand why he wants them to also have those experiences. Now, as it was, the younger son picked up COVID, and the older son was in close contact with him, and we decided it was best that neither of them went. And afterward, this is what I'm getting to, afterward I was able to ask the questions of both sons, actually, did you really want to go? And the older son said to me, I was very worried about it. I was worried about being away from home. I struggle with being away from home. I mean, not in so many words, but pretty much that. And the younger son said he was really anxious about it. Now, I rewind and ask myself, should we have put them forward for it without having some quite in-depth conversations about how they're going to feel? And the main thing is about sleeping away from home. We've done some sleepovers with my mum, and we've done one or two with my daughter, and they've struggled. They've done it, but they've struggled. It hasn't been straightforward for them. Then we have another scenario just coming up right now, and there's another opportunity for another weekend away, and it would be a great experience for our boys. So we don't want to wrap them up in cotton wool. We want them to have experiences and to be with other children and to learn different things. I was thinking, I'm really not sure about it this time. I spoke to them separately. The older one took him to one side and said, you know what happened last time? This is an opportunity for you. There will be people going that you know. How do you feel about being away from home for a few nights? And he said no right away. He knew his own mind on that. Now, the expectation could be that as someone who's now turned 13, with a group of people that love and care for him and are going to give him a great time, that I might try and persuade him that it's going to be a good thing for him to do. But I'm not going to do that, because I know it isn't going to be a good thing for him to do. And I know that when he's ready to do those things, he will tell me. And I've learned that the hard way, because we've, put a few arrangements in place sometimes and it just hasn't worked out. And the trouble was is that I then spoke to the younger one separately. Straight away, I want to go. I don't care if my brother's not going, I want to go. So I said to my husband that he'd said right away he wants to go. And my husband was like, oh yeah, okay, good. I was thinking, not good. Not good. Because he's just said it automatically, because he, in a way, it's the expected thing. That some of his friends will be going, and that he's trying to say to me, well, it doesn't matter that my brother's not going, I'm still going to go, I'm still going to go. So I left it for a while, and then the spaces were running low, and my husband said, look, we need to make decisions around this trip for them. And I came back to him and, got him off his screen and said, look, you really need to listen to what I'm saying. You'll be going away for a few days. There will be lots of other children there. It's quite a big group. You will have times of fun activities, but you'll have times when you've got to sit and listen. And we really need to make a decision. Are you sure that you are not going to be too anxious to do this, especially if your brother's not going? And he paused for a bit and he went, I don't want to go. And I thought, I knew that. I know you don't want to go. You just think that you need to say yes. Because if you don't say yes, that you'll look silly, or that because other people might expect you to be ready for this and you're not. We won't be challenged by anybody that we're not sending them. I don't know what people will think about it, but what I do know is that some people would expect that they would be ready, because in certain situations you can't tell that there's an issue. You don't always see that anxiety in them, and they learn to cover it up. So in certain situations, those people might see that the younger son has some quite appalling behaviour at times and is all over the place and chaotic, and that the older son is very, very quiet and kind of clings to you a little bit. But they wouldn't necessarily realise that anxiety is building. And going back to that book there, that the older one is frozen to the spot and the younger one is letting it out in anger. And it's kind of very difficult for outside people to see what is going on with your children. So if you are an adoptive parent already and you struggle sometimes to justify your decisions about whether your children are going to go somewhere or they're not, or what you're going to do, don't struggle to justify it, because you know your children. And people will come up with all sorts of suggestions as to what might therapeutically work with them, what might or might not work with boundaries, what you should do with your children, but only you know them. And you've had them from the beginning and you know their history. So only you can really make the call on what is best for your children. And of course, to listen to what they're saying, and maybe not always take the first answers, but to dig deeper. And then we've got the other situation around anxiety, which is what they put on themselves and what other friends are doing. And this is in a way an even bigger problem, because peers have such a strong influence. They do in our country. I'm not sure they do in every country, but in the UK, like, you know, what your friends say goes. I think family time has been eroded quite a lot, I think, by lots of outside activities, lots of things going on, and all of a sudden the friends become the oracle on everything. And so the expectations of what other friends are doing, watching, accessing, therefore that they need to do because that's what their friends are doing. And I've mentioned this on other videos, that sometimes, especially the younger one, will want to watch stuff that it's not bad per se, but it's probably going to cause him anxiety. So there was a Spider-Man movie, which is a 12, which the older one's old enough to watch and the younger one's nearly 12 anyway. It was specifically asked, can we watch this? The older one didn't like a certain character in there, but we had a discussion and it was decided that we would put the Spider-Man movie on. And no doubt it's the sort of movie that most 12 and 13-year-olds would be absolutely fine with. I think it was probably kind of like, you know, your action thriller violence rather than anything particularly graphic. So they watched it. And that night we had a wet bed from the older one, and I said to him, how did you get on with it? And even the little one said he didn't like that character freaked him out. And so we tried it. Sometimes you have to try things. You can't always not try things. You can't always say no, but it didn't work out. And the thing is that the older one kind of knew it wasn't going to work out. But the pressure from outside of somebody coming and saying, I've got this game, I've watched this on telly, I'm allowed to watch telly whenever I want to, I'm allowed to stay up later, I do this at the weekends. The pressure builds on your children and then they feel like they're different. Now, once my older son had his birthday gift, which was a new computer, which is a very lovely gift, automatically my younger son was saying, can we have Fortnite now? I don't mind what you think about this. Like, you might think I'm being over the top. I don't want them to have it. They may have it one day, but I don't want them to have it. And there's two reasons. One, it's really addictive, and one, it's violent. And I don't want them to have it because I don't think it's going to do them any good. And so I've held my ground and said, no, not yet, or maybe never, but you're not having it yet. This is not an opportunity just because you've got your birthdays coming that was suddenly going to drop the guard down and everything that's for 12-year-olds you can now have. We're not suddenly going to do that, because we know what anxiety levels are going to be raised within you, and agitations and stuff like that. So guys, I hope that helps you to kind of reflect on your own family situation if you've got adopted children. If you haven't adopted yet, I'm sure that this video will help you in the future when you adopt and as your children, you know, grow older in your family. Or you may be just interested in anxiety levels in children and you're here watching it for that reason. So thank you for joining me. Subscribe if you're interested in content around therapeutic parenting, attachment and adoptive family life, and I'll see you on Adoption with Nairi. Thank you.